The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to the Brandon Peters Show and the Summer of 82 at 40 series.
The Summer of 82 at 40.
A weekend by weekend look at the movies released during the summer of that year. As always, along for the journey from Forbes, it's Scotty Mendelson.
Hello.
Hello. This is the ticking down, winding down of it as we have one of our biggest weeks at the end, August 13th to 15th, 1982. This is a huge weekend, Scott, for us to talk about.
So big.
The fact I was dumb and I pushed a movie to this weekend to save for another weekend, but here we are. And you know what? Normally we start with the news of the moment, but Scott, you know what's bigger than the news?
No.
Star Wars.
Fair.
It has been 5 years since we first felt the Force, and it's stronger than ever. There is only one way to celebrate the 5th anniversary of Star Wars. See it again.
I think we took a wrong turn. Good luck.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
Red 5, I'm going in.
I'll take them myself. Joined Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi, C-3PO and R2-D2.
Come on, R2, we're going.
Join in the celebration this summer when Star Wars returns to a galaxy near you. Star Wars starts August 13th for 3 weeks only.
The Force will be with you, always.
We're recording this about a week after the 45th anniversary of the original Star Wars.
And we're talking about the 5th anniversary.
More or less, yes.
But if you haven't heard, it's directed by George Lucas, written by George Lucas, starring Mark Hamill, Harrison
that car
Ford.
and robots guy, right?
Yep. Yeah, we will talk. You know what? We'll have a debate about that car movie he had later in this episode with things. Possibly. Sorry. Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Alec Guinness, Peter Cushing, Anthony Daniels, Peter Mayhew, Kenny Baker, Dennis Lawson, David Prowse, and James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader. Luke Skywalker joins forces with a Jedi Knight, a cocky pilot, a Wookiee, and 2 droids to save the galaxy from the Empire's world-destroying space station, the Death Star, while also attempting to rescue Princess Leia from the mysterious Darth Vader. All right. We know what the hell Star Wars is, but it had, in terms of re-releasing, this is the 5th release. Okay, so it was re-released in July of 1978, August of 1979, April of 1981, And now here we are in August 1982. This is the last wide re-release of Star Wars until the special edition in 1997. That was some fun research. I was hoping for something here, but this little tidbit happened with the previous year. The April 1981 re-release is the first time the film was released with the title card of Episode 4, A New Hope. So this is the second time it's been appeared with that title card. It's got Star Wars re-releasing. Yeah, I dug. I'm like, is this the one? Is this where the? But I'm like, so it was the year after Empire they added the card.
Did Empire? I don't know. I should know this, but when Empire opened in theaters in 1980, did it say Episode 5?
It was the very first one to say Episode something.
People must have been really confused.
Wait, I saw Star Wars. This is the second one, right?
Wait, what happened to Star Wars 2, 3, and 4?
Yep. When Star Wars came out, the original thing just said Star Wars. It went all the way back into the stars, and then it is a period of civil war. Later on, Episode 4, A New Hope was added, but Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, was the first Star Wars movie to have it in the scroll. Then a year later, it was retroactively put in A New Hope, which George Lucas constantly tinkering with Star Wars, and nobody cared until 1997. But even in 1997, no one really cared that much. Then after 1999, they went back and cared a lot about it. There were, but it wasn't as loud. It wasn't as loud.
I wasn't thrilled with some. I didn't care. But yeah, the changes to the first Star Wars. Obviously, there's a lot of CGI characters running around in the background. It's a little bit cartoonish. I'm not big on the Jabba scene because it's obviously a scene that was cut and replaced by a different scene because the dialogue's almost identical to something else.
Right. Which Aaron and Neworth and I went over that back in February on this show to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the special editions. But this 5th anniversary, this is the prepper for Return of the Jedi the next year, but I don't think Empire gets re-released this year, which is kind of weird. Maybe the early in next year it does, but yeah. So Star Wars just throwing it back in theaters every year after it came out.
As remakes of The Wizard of Oz go, it's pretty good.
Yeah, this is my favorite take on The Searchers.
But yeah, it's fucking Star Wars.
Yeah.
And, and even whether it's your favorite Star Wars film or you prefer Empire or Sith or The Last Jedi, like us cool people, it still holds up as a standalone action adventure picture.
Right.
Even if there had never been a sequel for whatever reason, the only quote unquote loose end is that Darth Vader doesn't die at the end. And but still, if you're a moviegoer in 1977 or whatever, the Grand Admiral Tolkien was on the Death Star. The Death Star just got blown up. The Empire must be destroyed. The movie's over. And honestly, I'm not going to sit around here dissing Empire, retrospectively, but there are a lot of sequels, like The Matrix Reloaded, for example, where at the end of the movie, you think that, now they're going to just kick ass and take names and the final, it's over and the good guys will win in 5 minutes. And then when the sequel rolls around, it's like, nah, they're still on the losing end.
Right.
The big victory from the last film didn't mean all that much, which is realistic. It's just it's sort of backtracking. Again, The Matrix was not a movie that necessarily was intended to be a trilogy. Well, a quadrilogy.
Well, after Return of the Jedi, they scored the biggest victory of the Star Wars, and but it's still not over. There's still they took out the biggest powerhouse of it. People started to overthrow, but there were still Imperials throughout the galaxy fighting their fight, and that's where a lot of the expanded universe books pick up. The Timothy Zahn trilogy about Thrawn and stuff was about that. After the Emperor and Vader, who was the next toughest dude out there, and what's left of the Emperor? What's their last ditch effort here when they are the rebels? And it's an interesting dynamic. There's things to always focus on, but you can also be a JJ and status quo it immediately. But
yeah.
So without reason, just because that's how it was.
Well, and I was one of those people that was a Captain Crankbutt about The Force Awakens, on opening weekend, opening whatever.
Mhm.
And that was one reason is like, oh God, now every movie's going to be like this, sweet Jesus. And I liked The Last Jedi quite a bit. And I thought, okay, maybe it was, maybe Force Awakens was a necessary evil.
Yeah.
Last Jedi plays, in my opinion, is a very good and compelling sequel to The Force Awakens.
It makes it better.
Better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe, we'll see how the third one comes about. And then, of course, The Rise of Skywalker opens and is what it is. And, now I'm even crankier about The Force Awakens than it probably deserves because I know what, how that story ends and how, and, I don't know whose fault this is. I mean,
they'll
I
never tell us the true story.
Well, no, and I imagine they never will. I mean, I don't like every J.J. Abrams film ever made, but they're all well made and skillful and coherent.
Yeah.
And The Rise of Skywalker is none of those things, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do wonder what the hell happened and how much of that was him versus him just trying to complete a coherent film with certain edicts from on high. And again, I don't know if that was Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm or Bob Iger from Disney or whatever. I mean, come what may, from what I gather, Disney pretty much leaves Marvel alone. And I was always under the impression they did likewise with Lucasfilm up to a point.
Right.
I do think, and this has nothing to do with the quality of The Force Awakens, but the film was so successful that I think it tricked Lucasfilm and Disney into thinking that level of success could be status quo if only every Star Wars film looked and felt and played like The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny, like everyone went to see Force Awakens. Like my parents, I don't think my parents seen a prequel. They went to Force Awakens because it was Mark, Carrie and Harrison all back, and they went, saw it, had a good time, and they had no cares in the world about going to the other ones. That was enough for them. She handed him the lightsaber. That was, we're done. They didn't pick up where that left off. They didn't
That's
care.
Interesting.
They didn't care. They were like, all right, that was fun. It reminded us of the old one. That was it. The end.
Because there's always going to be some folks who are only curious the first time fans or audiences for almost any franchise, unless it's a complete shock that nobody saw coming.
Yeah.
And that's where you get your quick kill blockbuster thing with something like Star Wars, for example.
Right.
Although even so, I mean, Empire made about a third of what's, 2/3 of what Star Wars did. Attack of the Clones did about 2/3 of what Phantom Menace did. Mm-hmm. And Last Jedi did about 2/3 of what Force Awakens did.
Yeah.
And, not to toot my own horn, but, in late 2017, early 2018, I was screaming, this is normal for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Stop pretending it's not.
Also getting back to the first one, the originals, why don't they, we're at a big milestone for the original film, and why can't we go see it in the theater? Where's, why don't they just do a weekend? Pop this, they were popping in once granted, home video was different. A lot of people see Star Wars, but it's Star Wars. You could pop it in for a weekend and make some couple bucks. Do a Fathom events thing every 5 years. I
don't want to automatically blame the evil King Mickey, but I do know that Disney has been very ironclad about letting Fox films exist in theatrical re-release or repertory theaters and things of that nature. I know that's been an issue.
Well, I know that, but why couldn't they just Paramount put The Godfather out for a weekend?
But yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I might have gone and seen it. I haven't seen it in theaters since the special edition.
Yeah, I would go back. I'd be like, I missed it 5 years ago.
IMAX or PLF or something.
Yeah, just do it for a weekend and bring it out. Why not? It's a dead weekend at the put Star Wars in there.
Well, I think part of that is, frankly, I mean, not to be too conspiratorial, but I am under the impression that Bob Chapek, who's running Disney now, could give two poops about theatrical. Wow. So any choice that helps theatrical at the expense of Disney Plus is a no-go.
Right. Gotcha.
Even though, as I've been screaming as loud as I possibly can to anyone who'll listen, films that do well in theatrical do better on streaming than those that forego streaming or that forego theaters.
They can coexist.
They have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, again, it's the difference between, obviously Mulan didn't really get a theatrical release, but it was budgeted and intended to be a global theatrical release.
Mhm.
And that's what made it different from, say, Lady and the Tramp.
Right.
That's the difference between, Aladdin and Pinocchio. And even in Canto, which I think got a very compromised theatrical release.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sorry, if Sing 2 can do 400 million, I think Encanto can do better than 250.
Right.
But that film has done noticeably better on Disney Plus than Turning Red, which is a very good movie, by the way. But it as the film that didn't get any theatrical release at all for all intents and purposes has been performing less well, while very good on normal standards, versus Encanto, which got a theatrical release.
Well, Encanto had we're getting a theater movie real quick. They had that attraction to it.
And I think folks overestimated what it meant that Encanto dropped on Disney Plus over Christmas Eve and did just huge numbers. It's a musical. People are, kids are still listening to their favorite songs on repeat, 3 months, 4 months later, 6 months later, whatever. Turning Red is not a musical. Soul's not a musical. Luca's sort of a weird exception because that one's just been kicking ass since, for the last year, basically. But no, I mean, Free Guy had a terrific Disney Plus and HBO Max debut after having a terrific theatrical run. I mean, you can do both. Even David Zaslav, I don't agree with every decision he's been making with Warner Brothers Discovery. I would have kept Toby Emmerich, all due respect, and I hope he doesn't toss Walter Amato overboard as a concession to the Snyder nerds.
Yeah.
But even he seems to understand that there is a viewership ceiling on films intended for HBO Max, and the films that do well theatrically do better on HBO Max.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing that wasn't around in 1982.
Yeah, you probably can cut this whole part
Star
of
Wars
was
released, but no, it's all good. But yeah, so Star Wars, long time ago, galaxy far, far away of 1982. You got to see it in August again in the theater, and it was probably awesome. And you couldn't wait till Return of the Jedi the following year. You get to see Raiders and Star Wars again in the
Raiders, Star Wars, Poltergeist, and E.T. It's hell of a Lucas Spielberg summer.
Oh yeah, dominating. And now we will move on to the news of the moment.
It's the news of the moment.
Scott, you know what we like to report on here? Nuclear testing.
I thought you were going to say hockey.
Nope. U.S. They're off. Remember, we had the championships.
That's right. It's August.
August 11th, U.S. performs nuclear tests at Nevada test site. August 11th, the South African Defense Force, SADF, raids southern Angola. August 14th, the Iran Ramadan offensive in Iraq. So they're Kobayashi Maru. On August 14th, Pete Rose, a member of the Phillies, he has his 12,365th at bat, which sets a record, passing Hank Aaron. Still not in the Hall of Fame. August 15th, Equatorial Guinea adopts a constitution. And then this week, we have the deaths of this week. Alexandre Alexiev, a Russian-French filmmaker, passed away. Henry Fonda died at the age of 77. Joe E. Ross, a comedian. Patrick McGee, the actor. Hugo Thorell, and Nobel Prize laureate. So those are our deaths.
Slight interjection, just in case there are audiences young enough to not know. The reason Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame is because I just don't want anyone thinking, oh no, poor Pete Rose didn't get in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he did it to himself. In the late 80s, he was caught. Not only was he betting on baseball as a baseball coach, allegedly, if I'm not mistaken, he was betting against his own team.
He claims he has admitted to betting on baseball games, but never against his team. That's what he has admitted to that. But I mean, the guy's stats should that's, I don't know. To me, that's
fair.
separate.
I mean,
I don't we'll put you in there, but you're not allowed to set foot here. We're not going to have a ceremony. We're going to honor the stats you did, or,
that's fair.
But yes, I mean, the steroids guys aren't in. Like, baseball is a stickler for their Hall of Fame. Born this week in 1982, Tyson Gay, the sprinter, Devon Aoki, who had a moment. She was in Too Fast, Too Furious, if you remember. And Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier, or Tommy Lee, or
Speaking of Mark Hamill.
yeah, speaking of Mark Hamill. Not speaking of Mark Hamill, our next film, our first new film of the week, Tempest.
You can do what you want.
I dream what I don't do.
Tempest, the story of a father and a daughter who went from dreaming dreams
Maybe I'll just find myself an island.
Why can't you take me?
to living them,
Isn't this just so perfect?
who found love,
I've never been in love.
magic,
Show me the magic.
and one another. Tempest, a surprising comedy, rated PG. Check newspapers for a theater near you.
Directed by Paul Mazursky, written by Paul Mazursky, Leon Capitanos, on a play by William Shakespeare, starring John Cassavetes, Gina Rowlands, Susan Sarandon. Raul Julia is back this summer again. Molly Ringwald and Vittorio Gassman. John Cassavetes gives a compelling performance as a man confronting a midlife crisis with extraordinary results for everyone around him. So Mazursky, he's kind of like, he does lots of acting. He directs Moscow on the Hudson after this, and Down Out in Beverly Hills. Capitanos, who wrote this, would go on to write Fletch Lives. So that's his future. Scott, Tempest. Were you tempted by Tempest?
It's the second shockingly bad Raul Julia movie we've had this podcast.
He's not having a good summer.
He's not. It's, and critics hated this one even back 40 years ago when, well, to be fair, movies of this caliber in terms of production value and acting and adult sensibilities were more common. So we weren't like going, oh, at least it's still a movie.
Yeah.
No, it's well acted. I mean, Susan Sarandon's in it. Raul Julia is perfectly fine as a relatively creepy lech, lusting after Molly Ringwald.
Right.
I guess every boy that grew up with John Hughes films can kind of relate, but that's not my place. But it's not particularly engrossing other than as an acting treat. It's incredibly long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those modern day Shakespeare adaptations where the material clashes with the modern day setting in a way that just renders the drama inert almost throughout.
Yeah, his crap with like, oh, I can't get it up anymore type thing. Like, that's way too stagey, poetic-y for what we got going on here. And it's Susan Sarandon, man. But yeah, this one, I would watch this one, and you know what movie I couldn't get out of my head? I was like, I wish I was watching this instead. I wish I was watching this instead of Summer Lovers, the one we had a few weeks back. That wasn't that great, but I'm like, that had energy, that had like, I don't know, personality to it. Like Raul Julia feels kind of out of place because he's this goofy guy, but I'm like, at least he feels like somebody here. Like everybody else is like, I am doing things. Like Sarandon's fine. I think she figured it out better than anybody else how to do this. Ringwald's just, she's young and she's with a bunch of vets. So you take that job because you're probably going to be, Cassavetes feels like he's like threatened by Pacino and trying to be like, oh, I'm going to show this kid what's up. Like it feels like he took, like Pacino said no. And he's like, I'm going to take it and I'm going to out Pacino here. But yeah, this is a dullard. It's long too. It was like 2 hours and 10 minutes. And
not to be snide, but if you want to watch a modern update of Shakespeare's The Tempest, watch Forbidden Planet.
Yeah.
Which is a loose, sci-fi future set on an alien world variation on this story, and certainly works on its own, whether you know the references or not. It's one of the more, it's considered a groundbreaking science fiction picture. It's one of the first to have a robot as a supporting character, one of the first to have, starship, light speed travel. I think it's the first major Hollywood film to take place entirely off of Earth.
Right. Starring Leslie Nielsen.
Yes, back, in the kind of film in the kind of role that he was kind of spoofing in the third act of his career. very straight arrow, very, but that is, it's, I mean, I know normally I'd be absurd to compare something like this to Forbidden Planet, but this is a good ripoff, don't remake, or at least make sure everybody gets paid. Picture where, it was an iconic film of itself. The Tempest, unfortunately, has no value beyond what if Shakespeare was in modern day. And arguably there's a case to be made that it's even outside of the source material, it's a rich people get too full of themselves melodrama with high production value and wealth porn and all that fun stuff, but it's not a very good one.
No,
as you said, there are other versions of this movie, this genre, that are much more compelling, and other than morbid curiosity that really has nothing to offer.
Yeah, this is a forgettable film that people don't. I mean, unless you're like hard for Cassavetes checking out his career, because he has a career worth checking. He's a very interesting actor, very director, very interesting personality in the world of film. Certainly, if you're a Sarandon fan, skip it. I mean, I don't think she does anything too incredible here. She's good, but yeah,
it's No an Unmarried Woman.
You're probably not into Molly Ringwald movies anymore, so you don't need to go back and see where it all began. This was a dullard. I mean, in a week where we have relatively good stuff to talk about here, this is uninteresting. Like, I don't know what to say more than this. Like, cool Greek Isle setting type thing, but the Summer Lovers did it better. I felt like I was in the culture in Summer Lovers there. I'm just people staying at a house because they're trying to keep away from everything, but there's no life to it. Like, our only experience with the outside is Raul Julia, who's a creeper. He's the native, but like, it's like, I don't know. Tempest, don't be tempted. That's our final verdict on that one. Don't be tempted by Tempest. So
I will not be.
Wednesday on Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, when Daniel falls for Brian's old flame, jealousy erupts.
Get your fist up, Brian!
Then Alice and the gang go on a treasure hunt.
Just feel around the tag!
But will Mel's Diner survive? And on Filthy Rich, Marshall emerges as a macho man.
It's time we started separating the men from the wimps!
You forgot your purse!
Then TV's most unique private eyes are caught between the mob and the feds. Tucker's Witch wraps up a great new lineup Wednesday.
This is CBS.
So maybe there's better stuff on TV that week. So we'll look at the Nielsen ratings. The number one show on television this week, Scott, was called Filthy Rich on CBS. Do you know what that was?
I don't.
All right. So I looked it up. It is a sitcom, and it was a satirization of Dallas and Dynasty, those type of shows. So it was like a comedic version starring Slim Pickens, Dixie Carter, Charles Frank, Michael Lombard, and Delta Burke. It ran for 2 seasons. People must have been pumped for this. This was probably the premiere episode because it was not present at all. Yeah, it premiered on August 9th, 1982. So it would have been on this week of the movies. But yeah, people wanted that. Number 2 is MASH on CBS. Number 3, Three's Company on ABC. Number 4, another rerun of WKRP in Cincinnati. Number 5, Too Close for Comfort on ABC. Number 6, The Renegades on ABC. What is The Renegades? Do you know what that was, Scott?
I don't.
Looks like it was a TV series, a drama, and it had Patrick Swayze. Or something. Yeah, Tracy Scoggins. You remember her from and Kurtwood Smith? Tracy Scoggins. She was Cat Grant on Lois and Clark. So it started. It was a TV movie first, directed by Roger Spottiswoode, who did Tomorrow Never Dies and Terror Train. But yeah, so that was.
I enjoyed Terror Train.
Oh, I love Terror Train.
The post-Halloween slashers. It's one of my favorites by default.
It's the best Jamie Lee Curtis one without Halloween.
Yeah.
So it's about undercover investigators recruited from the streets to prevent arms smugglers from getting their weapons to street gangs. So pretty cool. They launched Swayze because he was just in a music video for Toto's Rosanna, where he was a background dancer guy and new to the scene. Okay. Number 7, Cagney and Lacey on CBS. Number 8, 60 Minutes on CBS. Heart to Heart is number 9 on ABC. And The Jeffersons rounds it out on CBS. So that's our TV. Moving to the movies where the kids were going this weekend. We're going to begin, Scott, with Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And
is this necessary?
That was my skull. I'm so wasted.
Is this proper?
What is it that gets inside your heads?
Is this educational?
Awesome.
No, but it sure is fun.
Hey, bud, let's party.
See Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where only the rules get busted. Rated R.
Starts Friday, August 20th at theaters in your area. Check newspapers for showtime.
Directed by Amy Heckerling, written by Cameron Crowe, starring our biggest cast list probably of this entire summer: Jennifer Jason Leigh, Phoebe Cates, Judge Reinhold, Sean Penn, Brian Backer, Robert Romanus, Amanda Wiss, Forrest Whitaker, Ray Walston, Eric Stoltz, Vincent Chiavelli, Kelly Maroney, James Russo, Nicolas Cage, Anthony Edwards, Taylor Negron, Pamela Springsteen, Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3, Pamela Springsteen, and Bruce's, the boss's brother, or sister, Lana Clarkson to write it out. It's about a group of Southern California high school students enjoying their most important subjects: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This is like the biggest cast in the 82. Like, everybody did something notable after, whether it was one thing or a career or maybe a little stint. Insane casting here.
Yeah, there are a couple films in this era where, like, it was introducing a whole bunch of hot new young actresses that were going to be the next generation of stars.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, they all went on to something. You know, Say Elmo's Fire is the one that always comes to mind. An early Schumacher picture, which introduced the quote unquote Brat Pack, Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, among others. This is a good film. I mean, that's not exactly a hot take. I was rewatching it for the first time in many years. Again, I was surprised at how not vulgar it is. I mean, yes, it's an R-rated picture, and there are moments where it earns its R rating, but it's not, again, it's not Porky's Revenge of the Nerds or something like that. You know, there is a certain...
I think we evolved to this in this year, because we had Porky's, which is like the bottom of this whatever sex comedy stuff, and then we got to Last American Virgin, which kind of classes it up a bit, and now we have found how to make it all work for everyone here.
And can I just say, it's what, 1972, so Roe v. Wade's been 9 years
82
old.
82, Scott.
82.
This is not summer of 72 at 50.
Sorry.
This is the summer of 82 at 40.
So yeah, it's been 9 years since Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, and we have two completely normal, uncontroversial commercial studio pictures aimed at the youth, in which characters have an abortion without much of a fuss.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not, you know, nobody bleeds to death in a back alley. It's not considered a wrenching emotional choice. It's just
the biggest challenge is I need money for it, and I need to get a ride there and back.
Yes.
That's the biggest challenge, and I don't need to tell my parents. Like, that's it.
You know, it's and again, I mean, it's pathetic how far we've fallen in that sense. You know, and in other obvious ways, in terms of films that were very matter of fact about racism and sexism and class, you know, disparities, and then just, you know, before everything became big budget fantasy clouded in metaphor. Where, you know, I mean, it's where everything was X-Men basically.
Right.
But this film, I mean, I'm always amused, considering what a reputation Sean Penn has always had for being the most serious of serious actors, that this was basically his breakout role, playing basically a skeezier version of Bill and Ted.
Right.
but he's very good in this. And I love his relationship with Ray Watson.
Oh yeah,
who, has a somewhat surprising arc as a teacher who just doesn't want to give up on him.
Yeah.
It's not even that he has to. It's just why not? An olive branch. It's a very sweet arc.
Well, there's an innocence to Sean Penn's portrayal of this. Like, well, he comes off as like, geez, he doesn't realize what you can truly see. Spicoli doesn't realize that he is wrong or maybe needs to improve or he can't help it. Like you see the part where he gets his note torn up or his schedule and he's honestly disappointed. He was like, well, I'm ready for class now. It's really, there's like an innocence to Spicoli that I don't think a lot of other films understand.
And I like that Judge Reinhold's character is in a non over the top way, very supportive of his sister.
Yeah. And he's the guy losing everything throughout the picture too. Yeah.
No, he is, he loses his fast food job that he takes great pride in, and he struggles to find something equivalent thereof.
He loses his girlfriend. He was on top of the world, he's one of those guys who thought he was a lot cooler than he was. And then the reality starts to crash in on him later on. Yeah.
And the end of the film is very random and weird in a way that I was amused by. In that, it has a brief flirtation with violence. Obviously nothing comes of it. In which the two the two leads of the film on the opposite sides of the tracks sort of end up interacting with each other and helping each other.
Yeah.
I assume people have seen that movie. Spicoli foils a robbery at Brad's convenience store.
Yeah.
And it's but yeah, and it's one of those films that, like Animal House, has a here's what happened to everybody afterwards, montage. And yeah, I mean, it earns its reputation as a very realistic, down to earth, level-headed, pitched at smart kids rather than panicky adults, teen sex comedy.
Yeah.
Not a farce, but a comedy.
It's a comedy, straight up. It's honest. I think the brilliance of this is the lightning in a bottle pairing of Cameron Crowe and Amy Heckerling.
Yes.
Like, he has a tap on it and she knows how to tell it. Like, that's because there's things here that I love that she's directing this, and she would prove her, like anybody would be like, well, it's Cameron Crowe. See Clueless. She does it again. Like, it's yeah. But there's specifically, I'll point out the scene where Jennifer Jason Leigh, where she loses her virginity with the older guy that takes her to the baseball field.
Yes.
And something that I noticed that has got to be Heckerling and nobody else is her perspective, where she's trying to look at something like that helps the moment feel special. And she's like this ratty light with flies around it. And then she looks at this graffiti on the dugout that says surf Nazis. And it's just like, it's just showing how, like, while it's a big moment in your life, it's not like this magical thing or all,
it's disappointing. It's underwhelming.
It's disappointing. Like, and it just, that scene, I'm just like, yeah, a guy directing wouldn't have thought of that. Like, he'd have just like made the guy like, ha, 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 ha.
Not to counter that, because generally speaking, I agree with you, but that's one thing that I like about the first American Pie movie is that, at the end, after 3 out of 4 of them have consummated their relationships, almost without even saying it, Tara Reid gets up and she's just like, that was mediocre. I need to break up with this guy.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, she never outright says the sex sucked, but that's the implication.
Well, the only one, it's funny because the one who was already in the relationship, that relationship ends and the rest of them begin one begins it with Stifler's mom, the band camp, and then the Chris Klein one.
Yes.
That those start after, it, but no, I really like the touches, all the characters, the bouncing around here, the girls being a bit more honest and fun, and of course there's Phoebe Cates from this movie. This movie's famous for having VHS tapes chewed up at the pool scene, which is funny.
I prefer dry hair to wet hair, but whatever.
Well, it's funny because, like, Heckerling gives us like the fantasy version and the real version, like, oh, I got in my ear. I gotta go. Like, it's just like her coming out. It's just like, oh, yeah. Like, it's the real version of it and the male gaze version. It's hilarious. And I think this is a game changer right here. We did have Animal House before. That's college. That's whatever. And it's over the I mean, those are characters, but they're not like, they're cartoonish almost compared to this. Where were we with high school films before Fast Times? Because I'm thinking back, I'm like, well, yeah, I was like, well, we have American Graffiti, Cooley High, and Grease. Like, is that what we have here? And this is the one that takes it from American Graffiti, goes, I am the tap on the youth now. Which Lucas wasn't tapping the youth of that day. He went back. It was a nostalgic thing, but it showed the themes of teens being timeless. But this is the one, like, what do you like better, folks? Fast Times or American Graffiti? Make that tough decision. Or even this summer, Last American Virgin or Fast Times. I could see people preferring that. This one, you get a little bit more diverse range of kids with it. But yeah, and you get a lot of mall nostalgia. Like, I had huge mall nostalgia with all the stores and stuff, hanging out the movie theater at the mall or the food places. But yeah, it goes through that school year. And it's funny. It's got good arcs for people. It does have an honesty to it. It's not a flashy thing. Yeah. I mean, it's got funny little like deep cut touches, like when what's his name? The jerk guy whose penis is now back in the movie, by the way. He's back. Yeah, so he's back. But he tells the guy, like, hey, put on side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4, and it'll let it do the rest or whatever to go on the date. And when they cut to him in the car, it's Kashmir. That's not on Led Zeppelin 4. He put the wrong album in. Thought that's kind of funny. I also looked at, remember the part of the class where the kids smell the paper?
Yeah.
That was apparently a thing back in the day, because there was some sort of machine that wasn't like Xerox or something, but it like smelled really good or something. Because a lot of people think they're trying to get high off like the ink or something. That's not what it was. But yeah. But yeah, no, I like Fast Times quite a bit. I had a little stint where I was like, it's not that great, because I've always thought Last American Virgin was underappreciated because it got thrown more with Porky's, and it's got a lot more to say, but they can both exist. Both are wonderful. Yeah, this movie is just, I don't know what else to say. Like,
I think every 6 years, Amy Heckerling knocks it out of the park. She's got this, and I don't think every one of her movies is terrific, but in 1989, she comes with, Look Who's Talking, which, by the way, prior to Wonder Woman, sold more tickets than any other solo directed female movie or film directed by a solo female director ever.
Gotcha.
It did like 140 in 1989, which is 300 adjusted for inflation.
Ah.
And then in 1995, she does Clueless, and I like Loser.
Okay.
I mean, it was not a hit, and even then, summer 2000, the discourse around it was weird, because I saw so many critics and otherwise that were upset with it because this relatively realistic college-age romance included a scene in which the female lead was roofied by somebody else, but wasn't date raped. And is rushed to the hospital in time to prevent any kind of whatever. And it was a very early example of, oh no, this depiction equals endorsement, hence this film is problematic.
Gotcha.
And I really like Vamps, the vampire comedy she did a few years ago probably 10 years ago now, with Alicia Silverstone and Kristen Ritter, which contains, among other things, a wonderfully sentimental performance from Richard Lewis, of all people.
Oh wow.
So anyway, yay, Amy Heckerling.
Yeah, Amy Heckerling rocks. I was at Loser. It was funny. Earlier this year, one of the music videos they did was Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus, which was the soundtrack song for that. And that one actually did very well. I just randomly picked it out to go with the Satanic Panic series because it deals with, that's what that song's about. It has a little bit about in there. And that one got a lot of comments, a lot of feedback. I was like, oh, okay. So you guys remember the movie Loser? Because that's the music video is. So I wonder if people like Loser. I think they like Wheatus, but I wonder if it's a connection between the two.
I don't think anyone remembers Loser.
I did. Jason Biggs with that stupid hat.
Yes.
So.
But anyway, so
All right.
it's as good as you remember.
So when the
Fast Times.
Yeah. So when the teens weren't hanging out in high school, they were busy getting killed at Crystal Lake. And Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D.
On Friday, August 13th, an all-new three-dimensional process will put you in the picture, whether you want to be there or not. Friday the 13th, Part 3 in Super 3D. Join Jason in the woods on his day, if you dare. Friday the 13th, Part 3 in Super 3D. Rated R.
Friday the 13th, Part 3 opens Friday the 13th at selected theaters and drive-ins.
Directed by Steve Miner. Written by Martin Katrosser and Carol Watson. Starring Dana Kimmel, Tracy Savage, Paul Kratka, Larry Zerner, Catherine Parks, Jeffrey Rogers, Gloria Charles, and Richard Brooker as Jason. Jason Voorhees stalks a group of friends who's just arrived to spend the weekend at a cabin near Crystal Lake. This is the one where Jason gets the hockey mask. So he's been wearing the hockey mask for only 40 years, though his movies have been around for 42, and he has appeared as an adult for 41 years. Before we get into this one, I'd like to point folks to my old podcast, Cult Cinema Cavalcade, where I did talk about with friend of the show, James Oster from JoeBlow.com. We talked about Friday the 13th Part 3, but the key is here. We interviewed Larry Zerner, who plays Shelley in that movie, and you can check out that interview there. He's a fun guy. He's a lawyer nowadays. But yeah, we had him on the show. But Scott, Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D.
A thoughtful and nuanced examination of Reagan's America as this slice of life's melodrama shows kids growing up in a world they don't understand into a future they can't predict and frankly can't trust. And with AIDS in the background as a persistent threat to those that dare to try to mimic the sexual revolution of their parents' generation. Holy shit, that was almost profound. Never mind. Obviously, I was just being a dick. But yeah, I mean, yeah. Jokes aside, the whole sex equals death thing. I'm sure that's that's always been a part of the slasher boom, and
right.
as a reaction to the the sexual revolution and all that shit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'll be honest. Even when I was a kid, Halloween, the first one was very good. Nightmare on Elm Street, the special effects were cool. Freddy was neat, and there was just something a little bit bigger about those films. I always thought the Friday the 13th movies were shit. All due respect. Even like Child's Play, well, that's kind of cool. You got an evil talking doll that looks like a big action adventure movie. The Friday the 13th franchise, to me, always represented the slasher film pared down to its bare minimum.
Okay.
In that, in most installments, but not all, there's nothing there except the sugar.
Yeah.
And frankly, this film is not one of the better ones, even on that curve. And having not seen it for a while, I kind of always thought reputation-wise that, people like the fourth one and people like the sixth one because it's actually the closest one that's actually being good. That's a different I digress. But I always thought that 3 had somewhat of a decent reputation, maybe because of the 3D or because it's the one where he gets his mask. But
or the disco theme song, which
or
rules.
The disco theme song. But I mean,
rules.
Frankly, I was bored by this picture, even by the standards of a Friday the 13th picture. And again, I can kind of apprient 2 because it's.
I think 2 is a pretty good horror slasher movie. I really like it.
It leans into the gallow, if that's how you pronounce that right.
Mm-hmm.
4 has terrific practical effects, and it's clear that they thought of it as a series finale, so they're going for gusto. 6, I genuinely enjoy. That was actually the first one. I tell a story all the time, so I'm sorry, but that was the first one I saw as a kid, and I was kind of confused because I wasn't aware these were supposed to be funny. And 8 obviously is the mother of all ripoffs in terms of what is promised versus what is delivered.
Yeah.
7, whatever. 9, whatever. And I don't have any strong thoughts about Jason Goes to Space.
I ask you this. Steve Miner directed 2 and 3. Like he got seeing both these movies. Would you be able to agree with me that like these two feel like they were directed by different people, even though Steve Miner did both of them? Like it's really weird. It's really weird.
And first of all, I think his H2O is one of the better Halloween sequels.
Yeah.
So this isn't pick on, for me at least, this isn't bag on Steve Miner day. I mean, one of the best Saw films, or the best Saw film, Saw 6, and one of the worst Saw films, Saw 7, are directed by the same guy.
Yeah.
He was somewhat forced back to contractual, they basically they picked up his option when Paramount ironically tried to get him to direct Paranormal Activity 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was called back into service reluctantly, and I'm not going to speak to his peace of mind, but I would assume the final product argues that he didn't really want to be there.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the case with Steve Miner here. I am not.
No, he was fine here. He They went with they brought 3D back. This is the movie that brought 3D back since probably the atomic era of horror movies and stuff. And this actually got a real big kick because then that Jaws 3D comes out, and there's a bunch of Metal Storm 3D. There's a weird short run of 3D movies, and this was new technology, and that was part of the hook was Jason 3D, and it was going to be really cool. And I get that. The movie plays with it so much. It was always weird to me when I watched it. Like when I first was coming up in TV, I didn't know it was in 3D because the title isn't in 3D. And you're watching this movie where people are like, "Hey, what's going on here, man?" Yeah, and it's really weird. And when I was younger, this was a favorite of mine. I liked it a lot. But as I've gotten older, it's kind of flat and just kind of lulls a bit. I'll go to bat. Like the first 6 of these Friday the 13th movies I like a lot. So even on a bad day, I could pop. It's meat and potatoes, Jason, whatever. Even though I don't appreciate this one near as much as I used to, it's probably, if I had to go those last 6, this one might be the bottom of those now, because I think 5 is a sleaze masterpiece. The Danny Steinman one
has guts.
It's got guts. It is directed by Danny Steinman, who did Porn before it. He did that Linda Blair Savage Streets movie, which is rad. But he is a sleaze master. Like I feel like the aesthetic for the Ninja Turtles cartoon was inspired by Danny Steinman. Like there's a weird hybrid of his movies and those old cartoons. I'm like, why do they feel like Danny Steinman films? But this one, I don't know. It's got like character and stuff, but the people are kind of just, I mean, it's weird to say annoying for a Friday the 13th one, but it does introduce the weird thing. Jason kills a pregnant woman in it. That's interesting. So you're building up. So part 1, he kills teens. Ooh, or no, his mom kills teens. The second one, he killed a handicapped guy. The third one, he kills a pregnant woman. And the fourth one, when Corey Feldman's there, you're like, he'll kill a kid. He will kill a kid now. So there's that kind of ramping up. They, Cheech and Chong, obviously popular. We've talked about their 4th, I think it was their 4th movie already. So that influence gets thrown in here a bit. With the male and female couple where the guy looks like Tommy Chong and she's no Cheech. You got the weird biker gang stuff. There's a lot here. Couple cool kills, though. I don't know. It does take a while to get to the end stuff, but anything done decent here is done way better in the next movie or the previous film. Like it's weird. Like this has a nice chase. I feel like it's got colorful enough characters you remember them, but I don't know if you're fond of them as you're watching it. Like Shelley, you're never gonna forget Shelley. But yeah, it's fallen off for me a lot in the years. I'll still watch it anytime. Like I said, the first 6 of these, good stuff. The Friday the 13th, but this one, diminishing returns as it's gone. And I think a lot of people hold on. I think it'd be fun in a crowd with actual good 3D technology to watch. But yeah, it's Jason gets his mask here. Richard Brooker's pretty good Jason. There's the hint of did Jason rape her when she was younger? that's in this movie where she talks about her dream and then
I remember
he
that.
he attacks her and then I woke up and nothing.
Like that's out of character for Mr. Voorhees, but that's okay.
Yeah. So they were figuring it out. There's no character. That's what I love about these is that like fans have tried to piece together some sort of timeline. Like guys, they just made another one.
Going along.
They just made it. What happened at the end of the line? Okay, that's fine. We'll do something like it, and maybe it's because I grew up on slashers and stuff. I had Star Wars. Star Wars is retroactive, even in the original trilogy. They retcon stuff. But I grew up with like slashers, sequel like that, where like I get so laughed. Like there's such a strict adherence to like canon and like continuity stuff that I don't care. Like make me a good thing that's just good rather than, oh, well, it's bad, but it follows the continuity or whatever. There's like such a strict adherence and the ability to not mess with the fear to mess with or change things. It's all made up to begin with, folks. And like, that's what I'm like, oh, canon. I'm like, fuck canon. Like, honestly, to me, like I've always don't care. Give me a good movie first or let's have fun. Like I don't need to worry about all that because it's all made up, but I know people can hate me for that, but fuck canon. Like like it's gotten to the point where stupid stuff is like just like adhere to, like we can't recast actors anymore. Like
it's funny. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy, maybe she was just talking off the cuff,
and I've been saying that before she recently said something, but
about we can't recast legacy characters. That's what the lesson of Solo is, and
and it's not the lesson of Solo.
Yeah, the lesson of Solo is that people didn't want a young Han Solo movie, which a lot of folks were screaming at the top of their lungs since 2013.
Right,
but I think it's interesting that when you watch, and obviously it's a different demographic, yada yada yada. But when you watch, Star Trek: Strange New Worlds on Paramount Plus, which is pretty good, by the way. It's a prequel. It's a standalone. It's very much trying to be like the original Star Trek that it comes off as a version of the Orville.
It's like the Orville, right?
Yeah, and that's neither criticism nor compliment. I think the Orville is excellent, but I don't know his name, but there was another actor that plays Spock there who's not Leonard Nimoy and not Zachary Quinto. And let me tell you, I couldn't give two poops.
No.
It never, it hardly ever crosses my mind when I'm watching the show.
I mean, recasting people goes back to Dick Sargent or Dick York.
Yeah.
That was fun. Like Second Becky, Full House. Like it's a role. It's a role. It's a role. It's a role. People do stage shows. They switch roles all the time. You could do it on TV. You can do it on TV. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's a role. Somebody might be better than others. Yes, some people create those roles. Some people, like, some people are just like, I'll roll, like, Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. Do we want to see someone else play Indiana Jones? Because that's one he created from crap, but we could.
And that is sort of the difference where you deal with something like, James Bond, which was, a character from a book, or Batman, who's from a comic book.
Right.
Versus, John McClane, who was just Bruce Willis.
Right.
As a version of his star persona.
Yeah.
Even though it's one that he sort of, finessed through Die Hard. That's a different conversation.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, yes, casting an unknown actor as young, Han Solo was one of many not great ideas in the journey to Solo, a Star Wars story.
Right.
But if the surrounding film or television show is good, or at least something that people want to see, then it will be a minor, it'll be at best a minor piece of trivia.
Right. Right. No.
I mean, they switch up Jason every Friday the 13th movie.
They do. Like, they don't.
I don't know.
Do people get mad that Richard Brooker didn't come back in 4? Like, it's not that big a deal. Like, to me, it's a whole bunch of. I know these aren't like, life isn't this magical storybook that has these endings. If you live in the world today, it's shit. Like, these movies are made up. This is made up stuff, dude. This isn't like, then Star Wars already, and these movies already have their missteps already. Like, it's okay to make a couple more. It's like nothing. Like, it's just weird to me that this whole like fear of recast. Like, I would see another, at this point, actor play Luke Skywalker. I'm fine.
Better than what we're dealing with now.
And yeah, and it's funny when it comes to Indiana Jones.
May the Force be with you.
But Indiana Jones, I mentioned that, but other like Sean Patrick Flannery, some kid, and then an old man have all played Indiana Jones before. River Phoenix has played Indiana Jones before, so there's been other actors that have played him before. But yeah, it's I guess I come from the school of, these slasher movies, James Bond and Doctor Who, where the roles change, different people play them all the time, and I don't give a shit. Because ideally, the essence of that character is there in the script, and some can bring it out different ways than others. And that's fun. Have fun with these things. Mess with them. So fuck canon. That's this episode.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie or the show being good of its own accord is the only thing that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else will fall into place.
Exactly.
Well, no, I mean, for example, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight have story beats and character turns that are wildly different than the comic book source material.
Right.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Because the movies on their own accord are good.
Those that do can sit in their loser corner party of three. But
not a single person that I've found complained that, oh no, Joker created Two-Face. Because it didn't matter. It made sense in the story they were telling.
Yep. It made sense that Joker killed Batman's parents in Tim Burton's Batman as well.
And again, in a standalone film that may never have inspired a sequel, that would make sense that he would come into his own as Batman, save the city, and avenge his parents' death too.
Yep. Full circle.
American Top 40. American Top 40.
Radio plays them, record stores sell them, Billboard ranks them, and AT40 counts them down.
So also coming full circle this week is Casey Kasem's Top 40, the weekly Top 40, the Top 10. Coming in number Top 10, we have a debut, Wasted on the Way by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. No Young. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Number 9, dropping in. Here we go. We got Vacation by the Go-Go's, which is, I believe, Friday's music video that we're going to be talking about with Jennifer Rayford. Number 8, Soto's Rosanna slides down to number 8, of course. Number 7, Keep the Fire Burning by REO Speedwagon moves up a spot. Also moving up a spot, Even the Nights Are Better by Air Supply. Staying at 5, Hard to Say I'm Sorry. Such a wonderful video. Number 5 is Hard to Say I'm Sorry by Chicago. Fleetwood Mac's Hold Me is holding at 4. Abracadabra has no tricks this week. Steve Miller Band stays at 3. John Cougar is at number 2. Hurts So Good. And again at number 1, Eye of the Tiger, Survivor. Eye of the Tiger. So good.
Thrill of the fight.
Can't get enough of that.
The challenge.
I don't know if I mentioned, it's been a while since we recorded, but that song, if you take out Physical by Olivia Newton-John, is the biggest song of 82. But
wow,
Olivia Newton-John's Physical is a carryover from 81. So
fair enough.
But it did most of its business in 82. So also, having the Eye of the Tiger this summer, An Officer and a Gentleman. That's a horrible segue, but we're going. Finally, after weeks of having it pop up and mention, the official wide release for An Officer and a Gentleman.
Zach Mayo had no business defying the odds, let alone beating them.
You ready to quit now, Mayo?
Yes. Gotta program yourself. You'll make it.
How did you slip into this program? You kicked me out of here, but I ain't quitting. You quit.
But first, you got to get past me. Understand?
Don't you understand? I love you.
Richard Gere, Deborah Winger, An Officer and a Gentleman, rated R.
An Officer and a Gentleman is now showing at these selected theaters. Check newspaper for showtimes.
Directed by Taylor Hackford, who has a really interesting career. Just lots of musical stuff, but random stuff. Written by Douglas Day Stewart. So another Blue Lagoon alumni shows up this summer. So everybody but Brooke Shields is back from Blue Lagoon. The director, the writer, one of the stars was in 2 movies. This one stars Richard Gere, hot off the heels of American Gigolo. Deborah Winger or Deborah Schwinger. This is coming after Cannery Row and right before Terms of Endearment. David Keith, Robert Loggia, Lisa Blount, Lisa Eilbacher, Louis Gossett Jr., David Caruso, and Grace Zabriskie. All right. So a young man must complete his work at a Navy officer candidate school to become an aviator with the help of a tough gunnery sergeant and his new girlfriend. Scott, I'm going to admit something here. Blind spot for me. I'd never seen An Officer and a Gentleman.
It had been a very long time since I had watched it. And it's one of those films that you pick up by a popular pop culture osmosis. Everybody knows how it ends with him waltzing into the factory and carrying her out, while dressed in his Navy uniform. A lot of people remember the whole, I got nowhere else to go. That's a line that sort of got used as sort of a comedic over punctuation point.
Right.
And to a certain extent, Lou Gossett Jr.'s drill sergeant was, I'm not going to say he was the first, hard-ass drill sergeant of modern Hollywood, because that's ridiculous. But he's certainly one of the ones that you think of when you think of that trope.
Well, yeah. Well, and to credit, Arlie Ermy was his on-set advisor. So if you notice a lot of similarities to the one later in Full Metal Jacket,
that's fascinating.
A lot of that dialect's coming. Yeah, he was his coach for it, and so there's lines that you're like, I heard that in Full Metal Jacket, and it's like, oh, okay. So,
and as a movie, I think it was terrific. I think it still holds up as a thoughtful, nuanced, specific drama. With regular people going through very life-sized, conflicts. And it's a very specific point of view and feels very authentic in terms of the world and where it's set, in terms of the Naval Academy and what have you. And it's very raw in a way that, I'm not going to say it's hardcore, because it's not, but it is an R-rated picture where you have sympathetic characters espousing, frankly, unsympathetic viewpoints. I mean, to what extent it would, I don't want to go into, couldn't do this today or blah, blah, blah. But, Lou Gossett Jr.'s characters, a lot of his, many of the fire-breathing monologues that probably helped win him the Oscar probably wouldn't fly today.
Oh, no.
For better or worse, because a lot of it is rooted in homophobia, even if it's performative homophobia.
Homophobia and like sexism to motivate.
Yes. And it does play, it's weird doing this film and Firefox, which was a couple months ago, because they really are sort of, you take Firefox, the fighter, the aerial adventure footage and the race against time, and you throw in the naval melodrama and oil and water love story, and you sand it down to fun for the kids, PG rated, and cut and shot like a music video, and you have Top Gun.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%.
And this film is obviously a more mature, sophisticated picture. It doesn't feel like it's written by robots, and that's the first Top Gun. I've never liked the first Top Gun. I'll say Days of Thunder and Cocktail are better. Partially because they feel more authentic slice of life portraits, frankly.
Gotcha. Yeah. Top Gun's a vibe. It's not a
that's fair. But anyway, I keep forgetting we all did the commentary a week ago.
Right.
But this picture, Richard Gere is terrific. This is justifiably a breakout performance.
Yeah, I can see what people saw in him a lot with this movie, even more than Days of Heaven, almost. Like,
but this is more of, obviously this is a crowd pleaser. Even if the very end of the film, to me, I don't want to say rubs the wrong way, because it's fine, whatever. It feels a lot like Dirty Dancing, where like the end of that movie, which is the part that everybody loves, is cheesier and sillier and more, feels like a test screening request than the rest of the film. Now, I'm not saying the film needs to end in an unhappy way or whatever. That's, the film earned its happy ending, but it does feel, especially because it's so almost abrupt. But the big romantic climax almost feels it's like from a different movie.
Yeah.
But it works. It works because the film that precedes it has earned that.
Well,
and because one reason that it's so abrupt is because the film doesn't feel the need to have characters spell out their character development.
Right. Well, and the thing here is it needs to happen because she has the arc where she keeps falling for the same trap that her mother did, and then he needs to not be his father, and that's why I think it works here. He
needs to make a different choice.
Yeah, we need the ultimate point of where we have grown from the beginning of this movie. Yeah,
they both choose their own destinies.
I thought it'd been funny if she'd pull out the picture and it was Robert Loggia.
Oh God, I was afraid that was going to happen when they first started talking about that.
I thought so. I was like, oh no. Oh, okay. I was like, that's why people talked about this movie.
Yeah. But no, it's very much stands out as, and even in 1982, it got rave reviews and considered an unusually good picture, an unusually compelling and nuanced Hollywood drama. So it's not even a matter of, back in those days, blah, blah, blah. Even back then, this was an exceptional picture.
Yeah, it was very popular. I mean, it was the third.
It was a blockbuster,
and
did 190 million. Not to skip ahead, did 190 million dollars worldwide on a $7 million budget.
Right, and people wanted to see it, but like Academy Award wise, it could not get the Best Picture nomination though. That's the crazy thing.
Me considering how Lou Gossett Jr. won. He was the first man to win, first black man to win Best Supporting Actor. He was only the fourth black person to win an Oscar, period, after Hattie McDaniel, Sidney Poitier, and Shaft.
Roundtree?
No,
he didn't. No. Oh, Oscar Isaac Hayes.
Thank you.
Isaac Hayes.
Yes,
I was like, Roundtree did not win an Oscar. I'm like,
I should have had that in front of me before I went in that spiel. And you're right. Taylor Hackford has a very journeyman career. He follows us up with Against All Odds. He does White Nights, which is a drama about a male ballerina trying to defect from Russia, which spawned a very popular, or at least in its day, very, buzzy song from Gregory Ives. Say you, say me. This video is on MTV every day.
Well, speaking of songs, this one had the Academy Award winner for Best Original Song with the Up Where We Belong by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes. And the funny thing is, this movie feels like one giant build-up to that song, because the score, it's in the score, it's in different ways. I'm like, when are they going to play the fucking song? And right at the credits, there it goes. And you're like...
Something that I think does that pretty well, ironically, is Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
Where, it really waits to the, right before, it almost chooses an ideal rubber band snap moment to finally kick in the Lady Gaga song that we've been waiting for the whole damn time.
Yeah. It was nominated for Best Screenplay for the Screen, which is now Best Original Screenplay. It had and Deborah Winger was up for Best Actress for this movie. She did not win.
Yeah.
Even though she's delightful. Dude, she's a firecracker. Every movie she's in, she owns it. She's queen of the frame, and then somehow fades away after the 80s.
Well, I think part of it was by choice. She knew that the kind of roles that that Hollywood was making was not what she wanted to do and not where she would fit in.
Right.
When you're, when it's in the 90s and you're seeing, The Matrix and American, all due respect, quality notwithstanding, Armageddon and American Pie and what have you, waiting around for that one Unfaithful or that one Last Night in Rodin or what, or a legal thriller or something like that, she walked away.
Yeah.
Now she has still worked since then.
Oh no, yeah, she
pops
still
up now and then. And there's actually a documentary about that called Searching for Deborah Winger, which deals with, why she decided to leave and what it says about the industry, that she didn't feel that she would be of value there.
I mean, I feel like she was in a type where it was like, there was like, you have Deborah Winger, you have Karen Allen, you've got Margot Kidder. They all kind of fit that that type, and then later they would evolve into like Lori Petty, Courtney Cox, that type.
Yeah, and I don't want to put words in her mouth because I don't know, but I would assume that's a similar reason to why Cameron Diaz retired.
Yeah,
I mean, she hasn't been in a movie since The Other Woman in 2014.
Right.
Excuse me, Annie in 2014.
Oh, okay.
And frankly, I mean, this comes to mind because I was rewatching Night and Day, for Top Gun week or whatever you want to call it. Fun movie, by the way. A fascinating time capsule in terms it was the first movie made after the quote unquote couch jump thing, which is not actually that, but whatever, where Tom Cruise was basically, the entire purpose of the movie was to show that Tom Cruise was still a bankable, movie star. I think that film's detriment, frankly. I like it, but I don't know if you've seen Night and Day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The entire film leads up to a reveal that he's actually the bad guy.
Yeah.
And it works. It makes sense. It is plausible. But because of when that film was made, this isn't his collateral era where he could play a bastard. They have to walk it back almost immediately.
Yeah.
And whatever. It's a shame.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think, if Cameron Diaz ever does want to come back, I think discourse being what it is, and in terms of who the critical adults in the room are today, I think she would be welcomed back with open arms.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she was great at comedies were like good bread and butter for her. Be they rom-coms or just straight out comedies.
Yeah. In Her Shoes, she's spectacular in that.
Yeah.
That was one of Curtis Hanson's better movies.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, Deborah Winger, I enjoy the hell out of her. Like I'm a big Urban Cowboy fan. Of course she's in that. But like and every time I explore some old movies, she shows up and I'm like, man, she's great. But despite, I was looking up on this, despite this being a lot of these people's biggest financial and critical successes, nobody liked working on this movie. They hated it.
Fair enough.
She hated Richard Gere, called him a brick wall. They would not see each other until time to shoot. He was miserable on this movie. Just nobody liked being there. Just kind of crazy because it looks like one of those ones where people are having fun on set. Like there's a lot of fun scenes in this movie. This is probably like peak drama David Keith, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think he winds up in schlock and like low budget things from here.
And not unlike Deborah Winger, Richard Gere is someone that again, he still works, and he is argued, and it's not my place to say whether it's true or not, that he was indirectly blackballed in Hollywood because he was very outspoken against the government of China. And he did make a movie which basically was 2 hours of China is bad.
Red Corner.
Red Corner, yes.
Yeah, that was in his interesting phase for me, where I started like seeing Richard Gere movie. He had like Primal Fear, he had Red Corner, and he had Mothman Prophecies, where I'm like, oh, this guy's making some interesting stuff now. Like
even in 2002, I remember thinking Mothman Prophecies is the kind of movie we don't get much anymore.
Right.
But and again, I don't know if that is true, but I think part of it, just again, the kind of movies in which he thrived became a scarcer and scarcer priority for the Hollywood star system.
Yeah, well, I mean, he never went. He was never
a guy Hollywood system.
Yeah, he was always more drama, like William Hurt-ish kind of, like where you barely
William
stepped
Hurt,
out
Tom
of
Berenger.
Mhm.
And I whether because of China or whether just because he has no interest, I don't expect to see him as a supporting character in Captain Marvel 2 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. No judgment, but
Yeah.
I think Annette Bening is very funny in Captain Marvel 1.
Yeah.
And it's interesting watching this picture again, how similar it is in terms of structure and overall arc to Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
It is also a sort of a modern day Cinderella story in which arguably, the princess saves the prince from himself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it also this movie was drastically different casting wise than what it ended up. I was like, because like Gere was far from the first choice. Like John Denver, I was reading John Denver, Jeff Bridges, Kurt Russell, and John Travolta all turned it down, as well as many other names made up for it. But Jennifer Jason Leigh was actually in this and had to drop out to do Fast Times. And so Winger replaced her. Huh?
How old was she?
She's deceptively older than what she looked at the time.
Fair enough.
But Sigourney Weaver and Angelica Houston at some points in the script going around were in that role as well. But they were actually going to film with Jennifer Jason Leigh and she had to drop out.
I think one reason the film works is because she looks like an adult.
Yeah.
In the same way that a lot of early Tom Cruise pictures, where he's paired up with somebody that, taller than him, but also older, more mature, and, someone with some grit under their fingernails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This was before, all of Tom Cruise's love interests all started being 31 come hell or high water.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Top Gun Maverick, they found Jennifer Connelly, who at the age of 46 looks 31. So yeah.
I did like Lisa Eilbach character, how she is treated in this movie. Like, she's, by her peers, is treated like a peer throughout the movie. Her arc is just getting through it, like
she gets through it off screen, more or less.
Yeah, off screen. He does, they have him help her get through the final. He gives up on his record through a course to help her through it. But, and she said that she did mention that the most challenging thing for her in the movie was to try to act like she wasn't as fit as she was supposed to, because she was actually in the best shape of her life during this. And she'd have Beverly Hills Cop, which would be huge in like a couple years down the road. But that's an interesting thing that they just let her be. Like, they didn't like make a focus on like, oh, the girl, she did struggle at the obstacle course, but she wasn't the only one struggling at the obstacle.
Yeah. No, I think it was done in a very matter-of-fact way. Yeah. Which, again, this is a very good movie. It was a very good movie in 1982, and it's a very good movie in 2022.
Yeah.
It's one of the ones that, it's a modern classic where you can see why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. And like, we always say, like, well, back in the day, a movie like this would not be the third highest grossing film of the year.
No, it wouldn't
at all. But speaking of, let's see how this box office rolled out this week. We have a lot of stuff hitting it. Almost every movie that comes out this weekend winds up in the top 10. But Scott, take it away.
Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D. $9.4 million and 1,079 screens. Around 820 of those were 3D equipped, and I think the rest were just drive-ins.
He decapitated E.T.
Yes, in 3D. $8,717 per screen. The third Friday the 13th film would eventually earn $34.5 million.
It's the highest grossing one until Freddy versus Jason.
Wow, that I should look that up. Hold on.
Yep.
Obviously I believe you. I should have had that pulled up.
There's a little bit of a downswing on Final Chapter, but it's about on par with Part 3, and then the diminishing returns start beginning. And I don't think
the first one was whatever.
Nope. 3 is had the biggest opening weekend and
biggest opening. I'm sorry.
Well, no, biggest, I think the gross of 3 is
Part 1 at 39.
30. Oh, okay.
I apologize. I remember when Scream first came out, and when it was at 57 million and just wasn't stopping, and it's like it was already the biggest grossing slasher movie ever, and I was like shocked to see that like before that the biggest were like Pet Sematary and Friday the 13th Part 1, which had outgrossed everything other than Halloween at that point.
Anyway. The original is the biggest, and then I think
I apologize. This is the biggest grossing sequel.
Biggest grossing sequel, and then Part 4 would be 32.9.
Yes, 33, and and then everything after that would be over under 20,
and be about like everything would start making like 12 to 14, or
It's funny, and I'm sure you've talked about this on one podcast or another, but to the extent that we define the slasher era as like the 80s in general, it really was sort of like a flash in the pan moment.
It's 80 through 84, and it's mainly 80, 81, and some and not really here at 82 too much, but 80, 81 has a bunch of them. And then they're about to die. So at this point, Part 3 comes out. It's big, but there's no other slasher. So the next one, they're like, kill the dude. And the same year they kill him off for good, Freddy Krueger arrives. But Freddy, funny enough, was beaten quite a bit by Silent Night, Deadly Night. That was the movie more people went and saw for 2 weeks until that got pulled. And then Freddy was kind of...
I know that.
Freddy, if Silent Night, Deadly Night doesn't get pulled, I'm not sure.
Holy shit.
But yeah, so Freddy, I mean, granted, probably had a slower open, but Yeah, Silent Night, Deadly Night was doing better than Nightmare on Elm Street when it came out. I think they came out the same weekend, almost.
Pretty much, because it opens 1.4 and tops out at 2.5.
Yeah.
And then did Nightmare come out in November or September?
It's November of 84.
It's definitely 84. That I do remember.
Yep. And then, the funny thing is they're like, Silent Night, Deadly Night was taken out of the theaters due to protests. I'm like, no, they made their money back and then said, fine. I mean, if you look at it, they doubled their budget or tripled their budget and then said, okay, we can pull it. That's fine.
Oh, you're right. Not that I didn't believe you, but it's fun to look at this. They both came out the same freaking weekend.
Same freaking weekend, and Silent Night, Deadly Night did better.
My God. That's hysterical. Nightmare on Elm Street topped out about 25. Part 2, I think, made 26, and then
Nightmare climbed
3 and 4.
Yep. Nightmare climbed. It was a build.
4 did 45, or 3 did 45, 4 did 49, and then they dropped from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that comes the dark cloud year of 89 where people were just done.
It seems like, as you were saying, it was like 80, 81, 83, maybe 84. And then like nothing, or not nothing, but, then 88, there's a flash, brief comeback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At 89, you have Freddie, Jason, and Michael all with entries and all just bottom out. And then they decide to kill Freddie and Jason right after those.
Yeah. It's amazing how much 89 basically killed almost every existing franchise that was up to that point.
Leatherface was supposed to come out in 89. It got pushed to like January or February of 90, but that would have got thrown in there too, because that didn't make any money.
It almost killed Bond. It almost killed Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Indiana Jones Rode into the Sunset.
Well, that was a huge hit, but yeah.
Yeah. He went on his own terms. But yeah, no, it's crazy that 89 is a weird turning year, and horror after, like, from 89 till Scream, it's like, what are we doing? Like, what's gonna happen? I mean, you have Silence of the Lambs, you have
Silence of the Lambs, you have your horror for grown-ups for a few years.
So a little bit of slasher lesson here, and so we got E.T. next.
Yeah, sorry, I lost the plot here. Hold on, let me get back to here we go. E.T. with $8.448 million in weekend 10, dropping by 11% and crossing the 200 million mark, by the way. An Officer and a Gentleman would go wide after 2 weeks of limited release. It would earn $5 million and 719 screens for a $6,981 per screen average, bringing its total up to $17 million. It would leg out like a mofo. It's going to be in the top 10 until December.
Okay.
The top 5 until December. I don't know why, but like it drops from 5 to 12 in pre-Christmas. There might be something weird about that. But anyway, and it would top out with $129.8 million domestic in 1982. Whew. And that's the second biggest behind E.T. Or let me see. Is Rocky? I don't think Rocky 4 is even bigger. But I could be mistaken. Okay, no, I know Raiders. That doesn't count. Yeah, Tootsie. I forgot about Tootsie. That comes out in December.
Yeah.
So it's just offhand. E.T. does 359 by the end. Tootsie does 177. Officer and Gentleman does 130, and Rocky 4 does 124, and then Porky's does 105. The top 5. We have 5 films making over $100 million domestic, which is, that would have been impressive even in 1992, let alone 1982.
Yeah.
And then. Sorry, I keep bouncing back and forth on these lists. Best Little Whorehouse in Texas is chugging along with $4.4 million after weekend 4 with a $48 million total. Star Wars.
Hey, look at that. Top 5.
$3.766 million on 1,070 screens. It would eventually earn $15 million in that re-release. Bringing its overall total pre-special edition to $322 million. Which was second at the time behind E.T. And of course, it would eventually be passed by Jurassic Park. Times are tough all over. 6th place. $3.64 million for a $13.3 million 10-day total. Fast Times at Ridgemont High opens with 2.5 and 498 theaters.
How many kids bought tickets to Things Are Tough All Over?
Isn't that one R-rated?
Fast Times. Oh, was it R-rated? I thought
they bought the Star Wars.
Oh, they bought the Star Wars?
Or E.T. because nobody was expecting.
Let's see. Things Are Tough All Over was rated R. Yeah, it was rated R. So no, never mind. Sorry.
That's okay. Fast Times would eventually do $27 million domestic, which was very good for what I'm sure was a very cheap film. How much did that cost offhand? I should have looked that up. Fast Times movie budget. $5 million. That sounds about right. Number 8, The World According to Garp with $2.3 million for a $14 million 24-day total. Night Shift, $1.75 million for a 9.5 total. Excuse me. Rocky 6, still at number 10.
Rocky 3.
I'm sorry. Rocky 3, dropping from 6th to 10th.
It's on the ropes.
On the ropes. 29% down, but still in the top 10 after 12 weekends in theaters.
Yeah.
104 million domestic so far. And that's pretty much it. I mean, Forced Vengeance, that's 1.15, went up 4%.
Yeah.
That's worth. Would end up with 3.6 by the end of the weekend.
Poltergeist for the first time out of the top 10.
Oh, yeah, but still only drops 25%.
And Pirate Movie gone. Pirate
movies. Yeah, that drops 50% in weekend 2, which in 1982 is not good.
Yeah. Young Doctors is out of the top 10 as well.
Yes, it's a number 11 with $20 million. And that's basically it.
Yeah, crazy.
Next week. The Beast. Ooh, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, next week is it's a nice 2 for next week. This is it. We have 5 movies this week. We will not have near as much. We have 2 and 2 to end this out. And 2 for a bonus if you go to our Patreon at patreon.com/Brandon.
Give us money.
Give us money. You get Porky's. You get The Sword and the Sorcerer. You get the proper epilogue to the Summer of 82 at 40 by going back to the beginning.
Brandon, talk about The Sword and the Sorcerer.
Let me talk about it, please.
Let me talk about Porky's.
Porky's. So yeah, but so that was
money you have and peace you crave. I'll stop now.
All right. But that'll do it for this weekend, August 6th through 8th. It's 13th through 15th, Scott. Where can people keep up with you?
Forbes.com, the ticket booth, Scott Mendelson. I'm at Twitter at Scott Mendelson.
All right. I'm Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD. Tune in next week as Scott and I for the third weekend of August 1982 about the class of 1984 that teaches how to master beasts. I think.
That is not inaccurate.
Roddy McDowell, Mark Singer, next week on the show. All that and more as the Summer of 82 at 40 continues for just a little bit longer.
We're almost at the end. Everything that has a beginning has an end. I see the end. I see the darkness coming. I see death. Bum, 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 bum.
The Summer of 82 at 40.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. The Summer of 82 at 40 and News of the Moment themes by Press Maxon. Additional information on this and other episodes at thebrandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at thebrandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.